Sukuk is simply an instrument of capital market. So to start with, you need an infrastructure that allows capital market to function in general. But then you need an adaptation to that infrastructure to be suitable for the Islamic finance industry. So what are the key elements of that? Of course, we have the issuers, those who are seeking to raise funding, and then you have the investors. The investors will be institutional investors, insurance companies, and so on. But also in case of Islamic finance, there are additional institutional investors that are very important. These include awqaf institutions, include institutions like Hajj. So these are additional specific institutions that could be very interested in investing in Sukuk. In the middle, you have the intermediaries who will basically intermediate the information and the transaction between the two parties. Now, for that intermediation, you need the instrument, and the instrument is what we call Sukuk. Now, we have to be very careful here. I mean, Sukuk is not a singular instrument. Yes, we have seen a conversion to some kind of a narrow design over the past few years, but it shouldn't be that way. There's a broad range of possibility for Sukuk structure that could be that are in line with Islamic finance principle with Sharia, but that is also could be available. But nevertheless, Sukuk, in a broader generic term, is the instrument for that market. Now, you need, of course, a capital market infrastructure in general to support the Sukuk. So these will include institutions to do the messaging, for clearance, for custody, for settlement, and so on. So this is a normal financial market infrastructure. Very little adaptation is really needed here for the Sukuk. So if any market, if any jurisdiction have these systems in place, they can easily utilize them to support the transaction in the Sukuk market, whether for the primary issuers or for secondary market trading. Then on top of that, of course, you need a group of people who understand this market. These are the analysts, the lawyers, who can look at these issues and they can make a decision. And of course, the Sharia scholars who will vet the validity of these instruments and the underlying asset against the Sharia principles. Then on top of that, of course, you need a very important layer, which is the legal regulatory structure. Now, the legal regulatory structure is important for any capital market, obvious, and there are basic principles that govern these issues. And at the IFSP also, we issue a supplementary standard for capital markets that will cater for the specificity of the Islamic financial instrument. However, there are additional adaptations that need to be done in terms of taxation. Tax laws need to be adapted for Sukuk, obviously. But also, there are more fundamental issues when it comes to legal issues. There are jurisdictions who are more on the common law side. There are jurisdiction more on the civil law, and in some jurisdiction, trust fund structure, which underlie most of the transactions in Sukuk, is not permitted. So that could require fundamental changes in the basic laws, which could be difficult in many jurisdictions.
Let's take this discussion just one step further and look at a practical example. Malaysia is at the forefront in developing the Islamic finance industry, and has a comprehensive business-centric Islamic finance ecosystem with a strong legal and regulatory framework. So we're already seeing some of the elements that Dr. Ghayat has mentioned. What advice would you give to other countries that want to emulate Malaysia's example or the success from Malaysia? What would some of the key ingredients be for this, and any lessons that could be learned from your experience that others could watch out for?
There was a need for the Islamic Bank to actually be able to invest in a liquid, low-risk instrument issued by the government, and the government issued its first Sukuk at that time to not just the Islamic Bank, but also opened up to the others as well. And over the years, we have seen that this market has grown tremendously. I mean, today, 40 years on, we have our government Sukuk market is about almost half of the total government bond market, whereas our corporate Sukuk market is 70% of the total corporate bond market. So in total, the Sukuk market, the government and the corporate, comprises more than 1 trillion ringgit, and that is about half of the total bond market size of the country. So it has come a long way. It's 40 years of development. And we've seen Dr. Riyad mentioned the legislative frameworks that required. Certainly, that is definitely the case. The government had to amend its act in order to be able to issue sukuks, and specific procedures were developed. However, we were able to ride on the existing conventional framework, and Malaysia operates a dual framework, and that has helped in terms of fast-tracking a lot of the development of Islamic finance as well, notwithstanding that you certainly have to undertake different or relook at specificities of Islamic finance in order for it to be to use the convention system in order to fast track the development of Islamic finance, and we took a very pragmatic approach in that. We developed for the government in particular. We were looking at government sukuk market at that time. We leveraged on the existing market infrastructure, the interbank infrastructure, to distribute the government sukuk. We rode on the law, the legislation, the existing legislation, and the contract law in order to develop the required legislative frameworks to enable sukuk issuances, which typically requires more contracts and more documentation, as Dr. Riyad mentioned. We also looked at the tax framework. Because of the nature of sukuks, it might attract more or additional taxes, and this could be cost prohibitive for if we're looking at also in terms of for corporate issuers. So one attempt or one initiative that we took was to ensure tax neutrality to ensure that issuing sukuk doesn't disadvantage in terms of the taxes that it will attract that would be imposed because of the structure itself.
How much of actual progress are we seeing on the ground in terms of innovation and the use of technology in the sukuk markets? Are we ready to embrace these new developments? And how do you see such initiatives impacting on the market as we move forward?
Through innovation, we were able to solve problems and face hurdles. And Alhamdulillah, ISDB also participated very effectively in innovating in Islamic finance. And innovation was the driving force for sukuk since the very beginning. I mean, if we compare, for example, the first sukuk issued by the Central Bank of Bahrain in 1991, we found that, and compare it with the latest sukuk issued about 2 months ago by the Saudi Sovereign Fund, BIF, we see sophistication, we see innovation. We see that the simple Ijara sukuk, which was issued in 1991, now we reached structures that are very sophisticated with a lot of details and a lot of innovations from all aspects, including Sharia, of course. And it will continue. However, although the sukuk has huge potential, which we can see very easily that we are only in the beginning of tapping this potential, through innovation we will continue. I would like to just highlight 2 projects which I'm working with 2 groups at the forefront of innovation in terms of sukuk. We all know that issuing sukuk is a very costly venture. Therefore, you rarely see sukuk that is, for instance, 100 million in size, because it doesn't make sense. It is cost prohibitive. All the sukuk issues I know are very big, 500 million, 1 billion, 2 billion, something like this. This means that the small and medium enterprise, the SMEs, cannot tap this source of finance. And we all know that small business is the cornerstone of development of any economy. Yet, they are not exactly the preferred customer of banks. So they always finding difficulty, and studies show that one of the main reasons for failures of small business is finance. Now, this group is creating a platform where they are using blockchain and the latest in technology development to make Sukuk issuance can be done by a push of a button, as they say, not as simple as that, but it will reduce the cost tremendously to the point that it will make sense to issue Sukuk of no more than 10 million. Now, this is a very important development, and it will be a milestone in the development of Sukuk globally.
A study was done on looking at the MDB's capital adequacy, and they made some recommendations. I think one of the key recommendations was that MDBs need to innovate more and be able to create more capacity. And how do they expand the lending to meet the development challenges of our member countries? Then once the G20 came in the Indian presidency, they started a review of MDB system as such, and they said, by the way, they dropped bolder, that they dropped the word bold. They say you need to be bigger, better, and more effective. So that was the main thing. Now, out of this background, again, that particular study also said you need to innovate, which means that main key idea is, which is kind of old way of asking, that we, the development industry or the MDBs, cannot meet the challenges of the development alone, or the ODA or the other rich countries or so, the system of development, we cannot do it alone. We need to bring in the private sector. We need to crowd in the private sector. And now the call for this bringing private sector is much higher, stronger than before. And for this particular reason, World Bank President has set up a private sector innovation lab, where he's taking the top CEOs, including the CEOs of the HSBC, BlackRock and others, and he's asking them to tell him how to bring the private capital in for development purposes. So this is the kind of a background. Another thing, one of the recommendations, at least which caught my attention, was into the report of experts on the MDB system. There was a strong recommendation to develop asset-based and risk-sharing products. So, which was kind of a very appetizing to me, or very attractive to me, because that links what we are going to talk about, how we can bring Sukuk, which is an asset-based instrument, to the capital market to mobilize this private capital, either through the capital markets, or either structuring something else to bring other private capital from other modes of finance. So now, when you talk about it, so look, the question comes, why in all this backdrop, Sukuk could be one way of, one tool or one innovation. First of all, Sukuk is an asset-based product, although Sukuk comes into a different, very diverse structures, but overall the main idea is that it has to go back into some identification of assets. So that's the one advantage. Second thing is